Hey guys, it's Mr. Walker here, and thank you for joining me for another math lesson today. Today our objective, our goal, is to solve two-step word problems. And these two-step word problems, not only are they going to obviously have more than one step to them, but we're also going to be throwing in fractions today, okay? So these word problems that we're solving are going to involve fractions, so we're going to have to use the same skills and strategies that we used not only for word problems, but also what we know about fractions to be able to do some problem solving and figure out some word problems together. So I'm going to go over an example together with you guys, and then we'll have another example up here as well in a different video, and then you guys are going to practice this a little bit on your own. It's going to take some time to get through these, to actually to think about them and dissect them and kind of break them down, and it's going to take some time to actually do the math, the fraction part of it. The good news is there's a couple different strategies that you can use, so as long as you're moving forward and understand what you're doing, you're definitely going to be able to find an answer that you're looking for. So let's go ahead and jump in right here with the first example. All you're going to need is something to write on, something to write with, and be willing to follow along and try some things. So once you have that stuff, an open mind, and you're ready to go ahead and click continue, and we'll keep rocking. All right, guys, so this problem says that Jing, she spent 1/3 of her money on a pack of pens, 1/2 of her money on a pack of markers, and 1/8 of her money on a pack of pencils. So she spent a lot of money, right? Not all of it. She spent all these fractions of it. So what fraction of her money is left? So right off the bat, obviously we're dealing with fractions and we're dealing with parts of a whole. So we want to figure out, well, what the question is actually asking us to figure out is what fraction of her money is left. So that's what we want to know. What does she have left? So if I think about the money that Jing has, obviously I don't know how much like she had. I don't know if it's $20 or $32.50 or whatever it is, but we can think of that as like this is all of her money, right? So I'm just going to start like any problem. Usually when I start problem solving, I just start like by drawing things out, by sketching things out, okay? So I'm going to say that this box right here is going to represent all of her money, okay? All right, so if this represents all of her money, then I can start drawing these other fractions in here and then try to figure out how much is left over, okay? So she spent 1/3 of her money on a pack of pens. So I'm just going to kind of estimate here visually and say that 1/3 of this is going to be for some pens. Okay, and then she spent half on a pack of markers. So the markers is going to be a little bit bigger. We'll say 1/2 is on markers. Okay, and then 1/8 of her money on a pack of pencils. So we'll say 1/8. Probably right here somewhere on pencils. So again, my squares don't have to be exact, all right? Visually, it helps the more exact you can get, but it doesn't really matter as far as what we're thinking about here. So of all of her money, she spent this much on pens, this much on markers, this much on pencils. What we want to figure out is what's left, okay? What's left over, okay? Because that's what the question is asking us. So there's a couple different ways we can go about solving this, okay? First thing I would do, I'm going to go back to one of the first strategies that we kind of learned here as far as adding and subtracting fractions. And I want to think really, I want to figure out what is this amount. If I can figure out what this amount is, I can take that away from all of her money, from that one whole, and then that should be able to tell me what's left. So I kind of want to add these guys up first. That's what I'm thinking. I'm going to want to add these guys up and then subtract it from one whole. All right, I'm going to move this over to the side here because I want to kind of, I represented visually here what we need to do, but I want to represent numerically what we're actually doing as well. What we're going to be doing is we're taking that one whole, right, and then we're going to subtract from it the sum of these three fractions. So I'm going to subtract 1/3 plus 1/2 plus 1/8, I'm going to be subtracting that from the one whole, okay? And then that will tell me, that will equal whatever's left, okay? Which we don't know what that is yet, but that's what it's going to tell us, okay? So in order to add up these three fractions here, we haven't added up three fractions before, but we could still do it, right? We know some strategies to get that rocking and rolling. So what I'm going to do first, I'm going to represent this 1/3. I'm going to use this strategy, where we're drawing out the rectangles, kind of like the area strategy or whatever you want to call it. So I'm going to start by drawing out 1/3, okay? So here's my rectangle, and I'm actually going to copy this. just so we can keep some consistency here. So I'm going to draw out 1/3. Grab my crayons here. I'm going to divide this into thirds. So there's 1/3, 2/3, and 3/3. Okay. And then I'm going to divide this other guy in half. Okay. And then what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to divide it into eighths too, because here's how this is going to work out. If I were to divide this into eighths, if I start to divide this out, right, 1, 2, 3, so that gives me 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. So now I have eighths here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And I actually used that half line. This line right here was also my half line because they're going to kind of meet in the same spot. So 4/8 and 1/2 is the same thing. So if I divide into eighths, I will have automatically divided it in half as well, or at least put in that halfway line there. So I'm going to take my 1/3 and I'm going to divide it into eighths, but that will also show that I divided it in half as well. Okay, so here we go, 1, 2. And my lines got really wavy there. But you can see that this is also my half line. So I took that 1/3 and divided it in half and also into eighths. Okay, so now I have to take my eighths and divide it into thirds. So do that this way, 1, 2, 3. So what I could actually say is this is my 1/2, but it's also divided into thirds. It's also divided into eighths. So we kind of covered all our bases there. Then if I do one more of these, move some things around a little bit here, and then to represent my eighths, I'm going to do eighths first. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Kind of see that there. Sorry for my sloppiness, but then I'm going to take my eighths. I'm also going to divide it in half, which is going to give me, again, that kind of dotted line across the middle. And then I'm going to divide it into thirds, just to emphasize that half again. That half went right across here. Cool. So we're all divided up. So now we have the same number of units for each fraction. So I could say that this is 1 whole, and then this would be 1/3, which would also be the same as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 what though? How many pieces did we divide this up into? Well, it's 8. Another 8 would be 16, and another 8 would be 24. So this is 1/3, which is equal to 8/24. Let's come over here to my 1/2. So we colored in 1/2 of this. We could say that this is 1/2, which is equal to what out of 24? It's going to be divided in the same amount of pieces, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 16, 24. So there's 24 total units. How many are in 1/2? Well, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. 12 24ths. And then over here we'll have 1/8, which is going to be the same as something out of 24. Let's see if I colored in 1/8, that would be just like one of these strips down here, right? Which would be the same as 3 24ths. So now we have all of these fractions that have the same denominator. We have the equal amount of units to each fraction. So now I could totally add them up. So 8 plus 12 would give me 20, plus 3 more would be 23. So 1/3 plus 1/2 plus 1/8 is the same as 23 24ths. Easy enough. So I got this part out of the way. How do I figure out how much is left? If I started with 1 whole and I subtract 23 24ths, how much is left? Well, I can think of 1 whole. This was 1 whole, right? These all were 1 whole. They were all 24 out of 24 pieces. If I subtract 23 from 24, it's going to leave me with 1/24. So she has 1/24 of her money left. Okay? I had to divide each fraction. I had to divide them the same way. The thirds I had to divide first in half and then into eighths. My 1/2 I had to divide into thirds and then eighths. And my eighths I had to divide in thirds and then in half. Okay? Some of those lines already existed, so I didn't have to draw them in twice. but the rest of them I had to add in. So that's just one way I could look at this, okay? Let's take a look at another way real quick, another strategy that I could use to solve this. And this way deals less with like drawing out the fractions this way and splitting it up, and more of just like some kind of mental thinking, okay? So let's get rid of this stuff real quick. And let's think of it this way. Again, let's think of that like equation, right? 1 minus 1/3 minus 1/2 minus 1/8 is going to give us something. It's going to give us what's left, right? That's what we're looking for. So if I think of that 1 whole as thirds, because that's what I'm subtracting first, 1 whole is the same as 3/3. And if I subtract 1/3 from it, well, that's going to leave me with 2/3. So I'll have 2/3. All right, so I'll have 2/3 minus 1/2 minus 1/8 equals something. So I kind of got rid of like a couple pieces here, or at least like combined them, right? Changed my 1 to 3/3, subtracted 1/3 from it, and there we go. I can come down to this part. Oh, I made a 7. That should be a question mark. I can come down to this part and I can think, okay, 1/2 and 1/8. So if we have those evened out, if I thought of 1/2 in terms of eighth, what number is half of 8? 4, right? So I could think of this guy as 4/8, and I have my 1 more eighth. So really I'm going to be subtracting 5/8. So now I have 2/3 minus 5/8, okay? So I got rid of these two guys because I combined my 1/2 and my 1/8 by thinking, well, 1/2 is the same as 4/8, and I have one other eighth, so that add those together, that's 5/8, okay? Now I got to get these two guys to match up, and I don't know right off the top of my head how I could do that. So again, this might be a spot now where I could draw those rectangles and kind of work this out. Divided this guy into thirds, divided this guy into eighths, okay, and then split this guy into thirds, and this guy into eighths. All right, so that would give me 24 here, 24 here, which is the same as, let's see, I had 5/8, so there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. And then over here I had 2/3. So there's 1/3, 2/3. So how many 24ths is that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. 16 24ths. 16 24ths minus 15 24ths is equal to 1 24th. Woo! That's how much she has left, which is what we had in our previous answer, 1/24. So 2 different ways you can attack this problem. The biggest takeaways I want you to leave with is that you can still totally use your rectangles and drawing out to make your equivalent fractions or equivalent units to be able to subtract. If you're subtracting or adding more than 3 fractions, just make sure that you combine them all the like ways. So remember the thirds we had to split into eighths, then we had to split in half, so on and so forth. If you can reuse the same line, reuse it. You don't have to draw a second one. If you could think of it more practically in your head and make those connections, like think of a 1 whole as 3/3 and then subtract, move things around from there, that's totally fine as well. You have a couple different options to be able to do that. So hopefully this gets you started. We'll have another video example that goes over some more problem solving skills as well. You can watch that too, see if that helps as well. And if you guys need anything else in the meantime, if you need any more problem solving help, please reach out and let me know. All right, I thank you very much for watching, and we'll talk to you soon.